In this video, we'll show you how to replace the rear wheel bearing on your Subaru Crosstrek. This is located in the rear of the vehicle, behind the wheel. To remove the wheels, we're going to be using a 19mm socket. Make sure you put your lug nuts somewhere that you're not going to kick them around and lose them. Now remove the wheel. To remove the caliper, we have two 14mm bolts holding it to the knuckle. Now we can remove our caliper, being sure to support it so that there's no pressure on the brake hose. In order to remove the rotor, we're going to want to turn down the shoes inside of the rotor. For that, we'll remove the grommet. Using a flathead screwdriver, we're going to turn the adjuster. Depending on which side of the vehicle you're working on, you may have to turn up or down. With the shoes adjusted inward, we can remove our rotor. We'll remove the axle nut using a 32mm socket. Using a punch and a hammer, we'll release the axle from the hub. Now we'll remove the four 14mm bolts from the back of the knuckle holding the hub on. I'll be using a swivel socket on an extension. I'm going to inspect the bolts and the holes they came from. These look good. I'm going to install them just a few threads in. All right, now we're going to be hitting the back side of each bolt. I'm going to be using an air hammer. I have a chuck that allows me to use a 14mm so that I don't smush the bolts. Our hub is pretty stuck, so we're going to have to hit it with a hammer on either side to get it to move. We don't want to damage the parking brake shoes though, so we're going to remove those first. I'm going to start out with the lower spring. Grab it with some needle nose pliers. Now using a regular pair of pliers, we're going to push in on the clip and turn the pin. We want to set all of the parking brake hardware off to the side in a safe place. Do the same for the other parking brake shoe. We'll remove the adjuster. I like to wind it down so that when we go back in, it's easier to install. Now coming up top, there's one. You can just let this one hang while you remove the hub. Now we're going to remove our pins. These simply go in through the backing plate from the back side. Your rearward pin has a little S shape to it. Make sure that goes back in the rear. Pull the one from the front out as well. Now that we've gotten some movement out of our hub, we're going to go back on the back side with our air hammer. Now we'll remove the bolts from the back side. You want to check to make sure that you haven't damaged the heads of any of the bolts. If you have, you may need to replace them. These all look good, so they're good to be reused. We're going to remove the ABS wheel speed sensor. That way, while we're cleaning the knuckle, we don't damage it. We'll remove the bolt, holding the sensor to the knuckle with a 10mm. Now, using a flathead, we'll be very careful to remove the ABS wheel speed sensor. You want to clean the inner part of your knuckle where the hub is going to mount into. You also want to clean the outside where the hub is going to mate to. You can use a wire brush or some sandpaper for this. We're going to apply some anti-seize to the inside of the bore where the hub mounts, as well as the outside. I'm also going to put a little bit just on the shank of the axle here. It's possible that your hub could get stuck in the backing plate. If that happens, you can simply hammer it out from the backside. The hub's going to fall out, so be careful, watch your toes, make sure you have something to catch it. We're going to use a little penetrating oil. We'll let that soak in for a little while and come back. We're going to put a little bit of anti-seize right on the backing plate, just where the hub mounts. This will make it easier for mechanics in the future to do any work back here. Now you want to slide the hub into the backing plate first, then start making your way over the end of the axle. You have to line up the splines of the axle with the splines in the hub. Then you want to turn your attention to the bolt holes in the hub and line those up with the bolt holes in the knuckle. Now we'll begin installing the bolts from the back side, lining up the backing plate first, then the hub. You want to get these threaded in before you fully seat the hub down. That way they're lined up and spin easily. If you're having trouble threading in one of the bolts, wiggle the hub. Once you find a good spot where it spins, try to keep it in that position. Once you have all 4 of the bolts in, you can push the hub in. We're just going to snug up the bolts. It's good to go in a cross pattern so you bring the hub down evenly. You don't want to fully seat the bolts down the first time around. Keep working around, and eventually you'll have the hub seated. Now we'll torque these to 48 foot-pounds. Now we'll reinstall our parking brake. You want to make sure that this piece goes with the curved side in. The S-shaped pin goes in the back, installs through the back side of the backing plate. You want to make sure that the pin is facing up and down so that it can go into the clip. We'll grab a set of needle nose, push in on the clip, grab the pin, turn it 90 degrees until it locks. Do the same on the other side. We'll install the other shoe. We want to install the pin so that it holds the shoe to the backing plate. Install our first upper spring. Now we'll install our other upper spring. One end of the adjuster will pull out. We're going to just apply a little bit of silicone paste to that. We'll install that at the bottom between the two shoes. And that's where we make our adjustment. On this side, we turn up to move the shoes out. We'll do that once we have the rotor on. Now we can do the bottom spring. Make sure your shoes are centered so that the rotor can go on easily. We're going to apply some anti-seize to the hub, just on the ring in the center. We can reinstall our brake rotor, lining that bottom hole up with our adjuster. We want the rotor to be seated on the hub when we adjust the parking brake. I'm going to use one of the lug nuts and an axle nut to hold it down to the hub. Doesn't have to be too tight, just enough so that it's flat. As we saw with the rotor off, we want to turn the adjuster in the upward direction to move the shoes out. Once the rotor can't move back and forth, we're just going to turn a few turns back in the other direction. Now that I can't move the rotor, I'll turn it in a few turns. Reinstall your grommet. And don't forget to remove the lug nut and the axle nut. Reinstall your axle nut. And we'll snug that down. Now we can reinstall our caliper. Make sure that the brake hose isn't twisted. And we can reinstall our caliper. Want to make sure that the brake pads are pushed out wide enough that it can go back on. If you need to, you may need to compress the caliper a little bit. We'll snug those up. We're going to torque these to 48.7 foot-pounds. Before reinstalling our ABS wheel speed sensor, I'm just going to put a little bit of anti-seize on each tab at the top here. You don't want to get any on the sensor element itself. This will prevent it from getting stuck. We'll tighten this down. This only gets tightened to 4.7 foot-pounds. If you don't have a small enough torque wrench, use your best judgment and don't over-tighten it. We're going to torque our axle nut. In order to do this, with the wheels on, you could have someone press the brake pedal. If you're working by yourself, a pry bar will do the same thing. We'll torque this to 140 foot-pounds. Now, reinstall the wheel. Line up the lug studs with the holes in the wheel. Support the bottom of the wheel to the hub. Fully install one lug nut. And that'll hold the wheel on for you to put the rest in. Snug the lug nuts down, but don't over tighten them because you're going to want to be able to torque them later. Now we're going to torque the lugs down to 89 foot-pounds. Make sure you're going in a star pattern to bring everything down evenly. And that's how to replace your rear wheel bearing on a Subaru Crosstrek. Make sure you pump up the brake pedal if you compress the caliper, and take it for a road test and listen for any strange noises or vibrations. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.